Another week in the NFL, and for the first time, a Saturday football slate. We'll talk about that and much more when Cole Thompson joins the Jake Asman Football Show in his weekly spot. Plus, I got to own it. I sucked last week in the picks. We'll try and do better this week. That and more. It's the Jake Asman Football Show, and it starts right now.
Oh, yeah. It's time for the Jake Asman Football Show. Brought to you by BetUS. Expert betting odds and fantasy stats. So let's get into some NFL football. Brought to you by our friends at BetUS. So get your questions ready. Here's your host, Jake Asman.
Yes, indeed. It is time for the Jake Asman Football Show. We're brought to you by BetUS. If you're betting on any game all weekend long, do it with BetUS. They have a 150% sign-up bonus with their first deposit, and on their second and third deposits, they're offering a 125% bonus. We have playoff football in college this evening, an NFL slate tomorrow, Sunday, Monday. It never stops, and we say hello right now to our dear friend Cole Thompson, who joins us in his weekly spot. What's up, Cole?
You know, I really felt good about coming onto this show, being able to roast you for going 0-3 last week. And it always makes me happy when you lose and I win. But the problem is I have to win because I went 1-2 last week. So I did better than you, but I still struggled and went below 500, which means this is not a good week for either of us. Happy holidays to all the Asmaniacs out there. Thank you so much for always letting me come and be a part of the show. Thank you, Jake, for letting me be a part of the show. Let's talk some college football. Let's talk some NFL football.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. So, yeah, you nailed it. 1-2 in the picks. I was 0-3. You are in front of me right now, though. You have the lead for the first time in a while. You're 24-18. I'm 23-19. So we still have winning records. And if you combine our records, we're still winning your money, but we got to get back on track. Before we do any of that, though, Cole, let's talk about the game from last night. What did you make of the Chargers win over the Broncos on Thursday Night Football?
This is, for my money, still one of the most dangerous teams to prepare for in the second half. You cannot take your foot off the gas for an instant if you want to take down Los Angeles. And I truly believe at this point, whoever faces off against them in the first round of the AFC wildcard is 100% losing this game. Because Justin Herbert just has this enigma that allows him to readjust, make all the necessary improvements at halftime, come out swinging in the second half. I mean, several of the throws that he was making last night are unheralded. Like, you just dream about those type of passes and you say, well, where was this a few years ago? And you realize, no, they were always there. The problem was he was just on underwhelming teams. Like, people still want to go ahead and give flack to Justin Herbert for being a quarterback that hasn't won a playoff game. Folks, Matthew Stafford didn't win a playoff game until his 13th NFL season. Kirk Cousins took over 8 years to win his first playoff game. Daniel Jones won a playoff game before several of the highlight pro-style quarterbacks that we talk about. But this is a guy that every single year is guaranteed to get you 38 to 4,200 passing yards. His first season in the league, he set rookie records in completion percentage, in touchdown to interception ratio, in passing touchdowns. He did everything that was necessary. He was just on an underwhelming team that fired its coach in the process. And now they have a stable run game, and now they're putting an emphasis on putting a big-time difference on the defense. You have special teams with Michael Dicker, the kicker, draining 57-yard field goals for 3 points on a kick that is almost unheralded, and they have an identity. I think that's the biggest point, is that they know who they are as a team. You can't miss on them. If your offense is going to slow down in the second half, I wish you nothing but the best, but you're taking an L, because the problem is when you have an offense built like Los Angeles is, they can strike being down 14, being down 17, and win by 10 points by the time the clock hits 0.
It's interesting because you look at the state of the AFC, Cole, and it feels more wide open than it's ever been. Just when we were about to maybe anoint the Buffalo Bills, they have that slip up against the Rams. I still think the Bills might be the most complete team, but they got to prove it. We know how good Kansas City is, and we'll talk about them with their game tomorrow against the Houston Texans, a game you'll cover locally. But I just feel like the AFC is kind of wide open. If the Chargers could maybe put something together here, I mean, they got a coach who's been a winner everywhere he's been, and they're playing well right now, and the way they win, you would think would seemingly translate to the playoffs.
The fact that they're able to outscore a surging Denver Broncos team 21-6 in the second half shows you that they have a second gear. And I think that's really interesting, is that as long as their defense is able to force enough 3-and-outs and make a couple of big-time drives and then punts instead of points, they really feel like an organization that has turned the corner. They've always had talent, Jake. I mean, when you look back at some of those teams they added when they brought in Khalil Mack and they re-signed Joey Bosa and they went big with J.C. Jackson, They had talent. The problem was they had inadequate coaching. Well, it's funny how culture is defined by those at the leadership position, your GM, your head coach, and your quarterback. The quarterback has been stable for the last 5 years. The head coach comes from a winning background and demands excellence from everybody, including the third stringer on scout team. And your GM is making the right moves because if he's speaking in the same language as Jim Harbaugh. So you add all that together, you now have an identity that lasts well. You also have an identity on the field that is sustainable. And I think that the really big difference for a team like Los Angeles is where do they line up? Are they the 6th seed? Okay, well, now they're probably going to play against the 3 seed AFC North winner. So is that going to be Pittsburgh? That probably benefits Los Angeles. Is it Baltimore? That's probably the best matchup of the weekend. Are they going to be the 5 seed? They'll take on Houston. If you ask me right now, I think Houston wins by double digits. Houston loses by double digits to that team. And then depending on that matchup, where that next game is played, depending on how they look and how healthy they are down the stretch, to me, it just feels like, once again, the identity is there for them to make up enough ground to where if they're trailing going into the second half, they're able to capitalize and put it all together. The offensive line did an impressive job last night, I think, in the second half, not allowing Justin Herbert to get tackled. I thought the defensive line stepped up really big to force a lot of those dink and dunk passes that we saw from Bo Nix and right at the line. There was no yards after contact. And if you can do that against teams like Kansas City, like Pittsburgh, like Houston, Buffalo, Baltimore, you're going to be able to hold your own and force yourself to get a lot of opportunities and second chances to strike. And I think that that's really what's going to stand out about this Los Angeles team moving forward. They're down, but they're never out. And as long as you have that identity, it's very hard for you to go ahead and say they're just going to find a way to lose this game. I don't think that they are. In fact, I could see them winning out and probably getting a higher seed than most people expect.
Let's talk about the news out of Atlanta. Kirk Cousins, after he basically wasn't allowed to do anything in that ugly game on Monday, he's been benched despite making an enormous amount of money to not even play a full season yet in Atlanta. He's been benched, and Michael Penix Jr. takes over. Friend of the show, by the way, Cole. You and I got him on the YouTube show at Radio Row last year, which was a lot of fun. Great dude. I'm rooting for him. But what did you make of this? You know, it feels like the plan was Kirk's going to play this year and next year. Penix sits and learns, and then he takes over. Atlanta wanted to make the move to bring in Cousins because they felt like they were close without a quarterback last year. And, you know, here they are. They had at one point a 2-game division lead, and you feel like this is a move of desperation. But now Michael Penix Jr. has a chance to play well and never give the job back to Kirk Cousins, seemingly.
It feels like to me just a ploy to get the fans back on their side. Because think about this, Jake. Where was the game last week? It was in Minnesota. They played against a Viking squad that needed to be able to find a bit more of an identity. Where is it this week? It's in Atlanta. They want to be able to have that homecoming feel. Michael Penix coming back down to the ATL, him being able to...
You're confusing the games because there were two of them. They were in Vegas.
Vegas, my bad. Vegas last week. But again, back in the ATL, fans are going to start to now buy into what the future could look like.
Bad opponent. It's a soft landing spot for Penix to play well.
It's a homecoming game of sorts. It's a way for him to be able to kind of boost up the mojo. They maybe start to gain a little bit of momentum to go ahead and surge their way into winning the NFC South. And so it's not really a lose-lose situation at this point in the year. We all thought that Atlanta was probably the most surefire team to win the NFC South, even with a Baker Mayfield coming back to the same system, largely because of what they did in free agency. They swung. They were not afraid to go after guys like Matthew Judon, and they weren't afraid to go swing and add in a guy like Darnell Mooney, and they want to bolster up their offensive line, so they did that. They added all the right pieces in play, and so it's a very underwhelming season. But here's the difference. If Penix looks really, really good down the stretch, well, maybe you have a shot at going to the playoff. Maybe you have an opportunity to win a playoff game because there's not enough tape on Penix, and you know your future is in the right direction with the current QB. If things go south, well, then Penix is your guy long-term. You can blame it on the lack of reps that he's had throughout the regular season, and then you find a way to build off of the minor successes into turning it into 2025 success for the long-term. So it's like, there's not a loss scenario here if you're Atlanta in terms of playing Michael Penix. The loss scenario is playing Kirk Cousins and knowing that even though he isn't the entirety of the problems that are going on in Atlanta, wide receivers are missing plays, drop balls by Kyle Pitts, the inability to find a secondary option to get on open, too much of a codependency on the running game, whether it be with Ty Algier or Bijan Robinson. You got to make a move, and you got to be able to, I think, start winning this fan base back over. They're sick of being the mediocre roster in the NFL, and this is arguably the most mediocre roster in 2024 because of they played just like the Houston Texans in a very winnable division, and their roster was built to compete alongside with some of the tyrants of the NFC. And yet the quarterback play, which is hinged on a guy that you spent $164 million on, only to draft his replacement at the 8th overall selection, the guy who's sitting on the bench may actually end up being better. And there's players in the locker room who say, why are we still here if we're going to only be playing for a dude that doesn't deserve to be QB1 anymore? So I think it's a win-win for for Atlanta. I think it's a very solid opportunity for Penix to be able to show his own. I think most importantly, what this does is it gives you a chance to hit the reset button, kind of set up a new identity for the downstretch part of the season. Do you get to 10 wins? Do you get to 9 wins? Do you make it to the NFL playoffs? Okay, we'll call that an even spade.
Cole, let's talk about now the slate of games all weekend, but for the first time, a Saturday slate. So we'll get into it right now. First off, for you, I know you're going to be busy because you're a college football guy, and of course, you locally cover the Texans and the NFL. So you got the Texans playing tomorrow. Well, there's going to be 3 college football playoff games on the docket tomorrow. So it's just like a cornucopia of football all weekend long. Tomorrow, you have the following all kicking off at these times here. The first football game of note is Penn State against SMU. That game is at noon Eastern, followed by the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. That game's at Arrowhead. That is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Then after that, at 4 o'clock, you have Clemson taking on Texas, and that is, of course, a playoff game. And not to mention, Cole, there's another Saturday game on the slate. That kicks off at 4:30 tomorrow. That's the Steelers and the Ravens. So huge game there in that division and for playoff positioning. And then the final college football game is Tennessee at Ohio State, with maybe Ryan Day coaching for his job if the Buckeyes were to lose. So I say all that to say there's a lot happening in football, not just the NFL tomorrow.
It's a beautiful day for this sport. It is a fantastic moment to where you wake up, you go to the gym, you go get your favorite bagel, you go get a nice coffee, you place in your Uber Eats order to have a set time delivered at your house. You crack open a nice cold one, you sit on the couch, and then you don't move for the next 10 hours. That is exactly what you want to do, Jake Asman. That's exactly what needs to happen, Jake Asman. If you love, eat, live, and breathe sports, football specifically, you find every excuse to not do a damn thing tomorrow. You're sitting and you're watching Patrick Mahomes take on CJ Stroud. You're sitting and watching Russell Wilson try to reignite the fire that is his career. You make sure that you watch as Tennessee marches on into the shoe to maybe pull off one of the bigger upsets in college football this year against a team that spent over $20 million to build their roster to win a national championship. You root for the little engine that could in SMU going to Happy Valley to give a sad song to the Penn State Nittany Lions. And of course, you watch a former state championship duo of Kay Klubnik versus Quinn Ewers do battle down in the 40 acres.
That's right. All right. Let's talk about the 2 NFL games quickly before we get to our picks. And if you have any of these games as your picks, let me know, because then maybe we just get right to the picks.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm picking one of them. So
okay.
But it's not the game you'll be covering. Texans, Chiefs. I guess the storyline to watch here is Patrick Mahomes and his health. They play again on Wednesday on Christmas. Does it make sense for Mahomes to play this one, play next one? Now, Andy Reid's already said he's going to start. He's practiced this week, but they got to be careful, man. I mean, Mahomes has played through injuries before, but, you know, the Chiefs have already proven they can go on the road and win in the playoffs. So if they're not the 1 seed again, for them, I don't think it matters. They're 13-1. I'm a little surprised they're playing Mahomes in this game. I figured maybe they'd rest him and then play him on Christmas. Your thoughts?
The last thing that you can afford to do is have Mahomes get hurt for a severity of time to where he's not back for the divisional round if they were to get the 1 seed. But I think that I understand the reasoning of why you're playing him. You got to clinch the 1 seed. They haven't done that yet. And they want to probably be able to rest as many stars as possible for 2 extra weeks rather than the 1 extra week by getting wins over Houston and Pittsburgh over the next 5 days. That way they guaranteed get the number 1 seed. Think about it, Jake. If they were to win their next 2 games, it doesn't matter what Buffalo does. It doesn't matter what Pittsburgh does. It doesn't matter what anybody does. They're guaranteed the number 1 spot. And if he can just stay upright, you're not asking to throw for 325 yards or for 6 touchdowns. You're saying, hey, hand the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco, find your open targets, don't take a sack, be able to stand up in the pocket and deliver clean strikes. You're good. So at that point, why wouldn't you want to rest him when you play the Denver Broncos in week 18, let him have the next week off when it's the wild card round, and then he's fully healthy and prepared to go when it comes to the AFC divisional round. Now, if there are any limitations to his game and you're starting to see that hobbliness, I think you got to bench him. They feel confident in Carson Wentz to take on over for the second half. Most importantly, Jake, they're playing on Netflix. Netflix didn't pay to go watch Carson Wentz take on Russell Wilson. They paid to go see Patrick Mahomes.
But that's not the Chiefs' responsibility.
But the Chiefs' responsibility is if the NFL comes and says,
Amazon
we're
paid a lot of money for Aaron Rodgers on Black Friday last year, and they got Tim Boyle. So, it happens. Injuries happen.
It is what it is. But what I'm saying is that if there comes that moment where the NFL steps in and goes, hey, we're selling a lot of marketing towards Netflix, he better be playing in that game. And they're up by, say, 7, and they bench him, okay, I understand it. But I understand the reasoning behind it. He is an aggressive, can't miss, want to win at all stages of the game mentality type of player. I understand why he wants to be out there. I personally would rest him, but it's Patrick Mahomes. He's going to do what he wants.
I get it. I'm just saying, there's a game to sit him. It'd maybe be this one. I mean, what are your thoughts on this game tomorrow? You give the Texans a chance here on the road?
Yeah, I do. I think that so far this season, we've seen too many underwhelming teams be able to play up to Kansas City's level. And I think that Houston is underwhelming in different ways. It mostly is the fact that we had such sky-high expectations for CJ Stroud to be an MVP in year 2 and take us into the Super Bowl. Sorry, that just wasn't the case. It never was going to be the case. There were too many better teams in the AFC at the very top that were always going to knock Houston down a couple notches. And we've seen that this year. But you look at the Denver Broncos, how well they played. You look at the Carolina Panthers, how well they played. You look at the Las Vegas Raiders, how well they played against Kansas City. Houston's better than probably every single one of those teams right now, and they could absolutely hold their own for 4 quarters, if not walk away with a dub, finish with 10 wins on the year, and then find a way to lose to Tennessee down the stretch. I just feel like there has to be a moment where one of these feel-good, lucky moments out of Kansas City ends up finalizing in a loss. And I think it's this week, actually. I have Houston winning this game, actually.
Well, there you go. A little upset special for Cole. All right, we'll save the analysis on Steelers, Ravens, because that's one of my picks. So let's get into it right now, baby. Look, hand up. I sucked last week. 0-3 for the first time all year. I had been red hot. I think, I hadn't had a losing week till like week 4 of the season. So I was rolling, but I got humbled, right? An 0-3 week, not great. I'm ready to bounce back this week. And Cole, I'm just going to get right into it with my first pick because we both suck.
How do you get the first pick? I get the first pick. I won last week.
You went 1-2. Are you proud?
Go ahead. Take the first pick.
You know what? You make the first pick. Go ahead, Diva.
I will make the first pick, Diva. I'm going to pull a Jake Asman special because I'm going to go ahead and take against the New York Jets because it's always the smartest play. And I'm going to take the Los Angeles Rams minus
Not last week. You blamed the Jaguars.
I blame the Jaguars, but the Jaguars are an awful organization. You want to know who isn't an awful organization? The Los Angeles Rams, who currently sit in first place in the NFC West. They want to punch their ticket to the NFC playoffs. They feel like a very sneaky team that you do not want to have to face when you go up against them in the postseason. I love the passing attack of what we've seen from Puka Nacua, what we've seen from Cooper Kupp. Their defense has been playing out of its mind. I absolutely love this front seven and how they're attacking the quarterback. I think Aaron Rodgers stands no chance. I get that it's going to be played out in MetLife. I get that it's an early kick. But sorry, death, taxes, listen to Jake Asman are usually things that bode well in my favor. Let's go ahead and pull a Jake Asman special and go take the Los Angeles Rams at minus 3.5.
Wow. Taking the Rams at minus 3.5 for game number 1. All right, game number 1 for me. I like Pittsburgh, Cole. I have a simple rule. Mike Tomlin as an underdog, you take the points, especially in this rivalry where Lamar Jackson, for whatever reason, he has never really played that well against a Mike Tomlin coach team. You look at his numbers against everyone else, and then Tomlin, there's a significant dip. And I know Lamar's been great this year, but Pittsburgh won the first meeting. I think the Ravens probably win. They're at home. It's going to be a rowdy environment. Baltimore is 9-5. Pittsburgh's coming in off a loss last week, but it wouldn't shock me if Pittsburgh won. And if I feel that way and I'm getting almost a touchdown, I'm getting 6.5 points, I feel like I got to honor my rule. Tomlin as a dog, you take the points and it's almost a touchdown. It's too good to pass up.
Yeah, we did that last week, and look how it came back to bite us in the ass.
I get it, but you know what? If you have a philosophy, you got to stick with it. You can't change your philosophy week by week. That's how you lose. You're playing blackjack, and you're a guy who hits on 16 every time. You don't just stop because you got scared or you're not feeling it. You got to believe, baby. You got to believe.
I don't want to talk about blackjack with you. How many times I hit 22 just for you to break even? I'm not doing it. Anyways, let's go to the Detroit Lions versus Chicago Bears. I feel like that every single week until they bring in an actual competent leader, you can pick against the Chicago Bears. So give me the Lions at -6.5. Here's the deal. I know that their offense is going to be missing David Montgomery. I get their defense is missing pieces beyond pieces. No more Alan McNeil. No more Carlton Davis. They're still going to be without Alex Anzalone. They're still going to be without Aiden Hutchinson. But the Bears are just a conference-ly mediocre franchise right now. I mean, the last time that these two met up, they had the opportunity to pull off one of the best upsets or at least send the game into overtime being down by 13 points, and they refused to call a timeout. Meanwhile, the one competent person that was actually working with Caleb Williams and turning the corner and Thomas Brown got promoted to head coach, and now he has to take care of the entire organization rather than just working with the quarterback. And so you're asking me to believe that Chicago, which has been eliminated from the playoffs, which we just saw as quoted by yours truly, another diva like yours truly, Caleb Williams lying on the ground, acting like a child after one of the sacks that he took against Minnesota last week, that I can believe that he can go toe-to-toe with one of the better teams in the NFC, not the NFC North, the NFC. And by the way, with the win, this should be enough for them to clinch the NFC North. So I'm sorry. I'm going to bet against the Chicago Bears. It pains me to do it because I really do believe this organization is being held back by incompetent leadership. The talent there is too much. But when you're just this gosh darn awful with so much perspective around you, how do I ever bet against you? Give me the Detroit Lions at -6.5.
Well, Cole, I'll tell you what. It's now up to 7. Does that change your thought at all?
No, it does not. Give me a touchdown. Give me 10 points. Give me 14. I don't care.
All right. I just wanted to make sure you're on the record. All right, Cole. Here we go. My next game is a game we actually mentioned earlier. I like the Atlanta Falcons at home. I know it's 8.5. I know it's Penix's first start. I've watched too much Giants football this year for my job on ESPN New York. That is a bad football team. A very, very bad football team that looks like they have quit. I don't think the Giants are capable of scoring enough points to keep up with Atlanta. I think it could be an ugly game, but Atlanta could win an ugly game, let's say, 20-6, and they'll cover the number. So I like Atlanta here. Penix at home. I think Bijan has a nice day. I just look at the Giants, and they look like a team that's in full tank mode. So Atlanta here, it's a big number. I'm going to check to see if it moved at all since I locked this in earlier, but it is still 8.5, and I'm going to lay the 8.5 with Atlanta at home needing the game.
Well, that's a very good pick. I can't vehemently disagree with you. Here's what I definitely hope you don't disagree with. You talked about playing strategy. What's been my strategy for most of the season? Taking a Monday Night Football game. I'm going to skip on it and go to a primetime game still. Let's go down to Arlington and talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Dallas Cowboys. Jake, did you know that that Baker Mayfield is third in the NFL in passing yards?
I did not.
Do you know that he was third in the NFL in completion percentage? Do you know that he was fourth in the NFL in passer rating? Did you know that he was third in the NFL in passing touchdowns? Did you know that he was fourth in the NFL in QBR? And this man is not getting any love or appreciation for taking a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that lost its go-to wide receiver in Chris Godwin for the entire season, was without one of its star players in Mike Evans, who's now going to be in jeopardy of not getting 1,000 yards, to a potential 11-win season, another division title, and a home playoff game. And we're just going to act like Baker Mayfield has not been one of the more sought-after, underrated stories in the NFL this past year. I'm tired of the disrespect. Put him on primetime television. Let him show the world. While, yes, he will make some erratic throws from time to time, when you give him the opportunities to strike, he 9 times out of 10 connects. I like Bucky Irving to once again go off. I am very excited to see what this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team could do in the playoffs. They may be, to me, one of the most underappreciated rosters going into the postseason. Like the -4, go ahead and hammer the Buccos.
Wow. All right, Cole on the Bucs. All right, my final game, Cole. Vikings at the Seahawks. I like Seattle in a bounce-back spot here. I think the Vikings are ripe to get picked off. It hasn't happened yet. I've done this a couple times, and I've been burnt by this, but Seattle desperately needs the game. You're getting 3 at home. I think Seattle is going to play a lot better than they did last week when Green Bay went in there and really shut them up. And I don't know. I have a weird feeling Seattle's going to win this game. I've said it a lot. I like the Viking story. I like what Darnold's done. I'm a fan of his. I just don't think they're as good as this 12-2 record indicates. I think they're going to get picked off here at least once before the year ends. So I'm calling my shot. Seattle getting 3 at home, my last pick.
They have to lose at some point. I thought last week was going to be the week for some reason. I really did. I thought that they were finally going to be humble just a little bit. he's going to get so much money too. That's the scary part, Jake. Like, I don't know if he's going to get paid by Minnesota, but Sam Darnold is going to get paid this offseason. And that's going to be malpractice for any GM.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 3 picks for each of us. Steelers plus 6.5 at Ravens. Giants at Atlanta. I like Atlanta minus 8.5. Seattle plus 3 at home against the Vikings. Cole's 3 picks. Rams minus 3.5 at the Jets. Lions minus 7 at the Bears. And Bucks minus 4 at the Cowboys. Cole going with 3 favorites. And I'm going with 2 woof woof underdogs and 1 favorite.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's see. How did the underdog work for you last week?
Well, we're trying to bounce back, man.
You got any plans for the holiday season?
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Name a holiday. There's a good chance I'm working it.
Hanukkah.
Yeah, I'll be on every day.
Kwanzaa.
I don't know when that is, but probably
the exact same day the Hanukkah starts.
Well, there you go. I will be on. I'll be on Christmas. I'll be on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. It doesn't stop, baby.
Festivus.
Yeah, I got to air out my grievances. Absolutely.
By the way, so I was at Pluckers Trivia a couple nights ago. That was a question. I should have texted you.
I would have got it right for you.
I had no idea that it was the airing of grievances. I was sitting there, I was like, hold up. I know that's from Seinfeld, but what is the name of the holiday?
Festivus for the rest of us, baby.
I hate myself.
Anyway.
We lost because of that, by the way. Just congratulations.
Well, you should have called me.
Oh, yeah.
Sad. Cole, great job as always. Enjoy your weekend. Happy holidays to you. We will find time at some point next week to squeeze in a show so we can at least give some picks for the upcoming slate. So there's no doubt about that.
We got to close out 2024 on a high note, which means a winning formula for you guys to walk away a bit richer.
No doubt. Well said. He's Cole Thompson. My name is Jake Asman. You guys know, but I'll say it again. We're presented by BetUS. If you want to bet on any of the games you heard us discuss or any of the college football playoff games, which starts tonight with Notre Dame and Indiana, use BetUS. They should be your go-to sports book. They offer a 150% sign-up bonus with your first deposit. He's Cole. My name is Jake. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and thanks for watching another rousing rendition of the Jake Asman Football Show.
Happy holidays.